Okay. You've got my new artistic display in the background there. I've definitely got I've definitely been spending my time wisely. Obviously teaching some lessons online to my actual classes at school, but have also got really into watercolors. So let me know what you think of those. Hi Izzy, we've got some more people joining. So let me get my screens ready. Someone reminded me, just get your face in there. So yeah, welcome. So I'm going to try and follow on from what Matt's been talking about in his first live today at 2 p.m. My first kind of question and thing that I wanted to share with you is actually one that's quite has been quite dear to my heart in this time of isolation. Something I've been really getting into over the past in the past few weeks. Hang on, let me see if I can get this. Sorry, I had to change my program I was using to share images with you and some content because it kept crashing. I'm trying to get. This is what the problem with. Oh, Marielle, cool, you at Matt's video. Thanks so much. Great. I think we all were. Okay, cool. Jeffis, yeah, absolutely. Lovely. Beautiful artwork. Thanks, Mitt. Lovely. Thank you very much. I'm quite proud of it, actually. I feel like it could be my new calling. Okay, right. We are ready. Let's see if we can get a little bit more techy with this. Sorry, guys. Thank you for your patience. We've got people joining anyway. Nazcar. Catherine. Enzo Catherine. Oi. Hello. Hello. Right, okay. We're ready. We are ready. So we're going to go screen and we're going to go full screen. And we're going to hope this works. Cool. So I would like to introduce to you something that I have. I'm going to have to zoom in. Otherwise, I'm going to reveal my next bit. I want to introduce to you something that I have been spending too much time eating over the past few weeks. And I wondered once Matt had been discussing this, and interestingly, like, you know, maybe people have an opinion about this. He was talking about this kind of ingrained behaviour of how we maybe assume that that meat and certain kind of food products, this is the way I was thinking about it, are healthy for us and are the best things we can have in our diet. And Rebecca's dedication, Daddy. Right, okay, here we go. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Marielle says my dad eats lots of corn. That's good. So the argument that people often make is that eating meat is it forms a lot of micronutrients in our diet, things that we can't get from just having a vegetarian or a vegan diet. Now I'm trying to remember the exact name of the micronutrient that you have to take as a supplement. Because I remember vividly reading it in one of Matt's Instagram posts, but now I'm gonna have to revert back to that at another point. Maybe text Matt during this time. But I wondered if anyone knew what actually goes into making a corn cocktail sausage, because I personally think it's kind of witchcraft, and then I always joke about it being kind of completely inexplainable. But actually there is a specific product that goes into making them. Does anyone know what it is? Some sort of fungi, yeah. It's not soya protein. Actually, there's a lot. I thought it was soya protein originally. Okay, so it actually is a microprotein, mycoprotein that originates from wheat or maize, and then they combine that with potato extract, and then they ferment it together, a bit like when you make beer or yogurt, and then that produces this essentially this protein, this bacterial protein that grows on top. And if we were to kind of convert to eating more of this kind of protein, we could reduce our CO2 emissions dramatically. so that's kind of brings us into like the main question that we've got for today. Some sort, yeah, tofu. Is anyone, what do people feel about tofu? People's thoughts on tofu. Sorry, this is not getting massively. My tech today is not on point, but we'll get there. I promise it'll get better. Yeah, I agree. It does sound a bit like witchcraft. Oh, and also, amazingly, they actually discovered this particular type of mycoprotein, Quorn in particular, discovered it in a field in the southeast of England, in multiple fields. So it might be because of the potatoes that grow in East Anglia. I'm not sure, but it was actually discovered in the UK. So tasty corn that could help us reduce our CO2 emissions. Texture is weird, yeah, definitely. Okay. So we're gonna start off and leading on to actually who is responsible. Now we could go back. I was going to go back in time a little bit and look at kind of historic CO2 emissions, and if we look at kind of how much of the current climate crisis has been caused by particular countries, that would be an interesting way of looking at it from a geographical perspective. But I want to look at it from a more kind of current CO2 emissions perspective, and what stakeholders, so the actual kind of actors and the people responsible, the people who are responsible for making decisions, okay, including you and I, who has the most responsibility, who is that? So we want to get a bit of a debate going. I've got lots of chat about potatoes. Love it. Potatoes. Okay, delicious corn. Now, okay, I'm going to go down to, you might have already seen this, I might have already given you a sneak preview. So I wondered if we could assign some different sectors of the economy to these greenhouse gas emissions. I might have already revealed this one, which I will take full responsibility for. So the purple, the blue, and the orange part of the pie chart, people might already have some ideas based on what we've already discussed in Matt's live, and what economic sectors that means. Essentially, kind of types of economic activity that produce the most CO2 emissions. So maybe let's just do the orange and blue parts of the pie chart, because those are the ones that you can't see, whereas I haven't hidden the industry one particularly well. We've got a few good guesses. We've got ones for, I'm going to wait for some more answers to come in, because Matt was talking about people giving answers and then kind of going with the most one. Yeah, so it is split up into different uses within different economic activity. So think about maybe what we are, why we have to burn fossil fuels. Why is it that we are burning so many fossil fuels themselves? Actually, transport. So interestingly, transportation isn't the highest CO2 emissions, as you can say. It's 14%, as you can see. Someone said manufacturing, Rebecca, really good. So that this one with industry is definitely manufacturing, and we're going to talk about what particular types of manufacturing that is, and how, and maybe who are the actors, the stakeholders responsible for that. Someone said farming. Great, we've missed out farming. A couple of people said farming. Rebecca said farming as well. Great. Factories, yeah, absolutely. So industry. I'm just gonna get the thing. So actually, let's just go over to the original one. We'll get the annotations. Oh, one sec. No one wants to see Microsoft Office. Okay, bear with me. No, that's not the one I need. Somehow it's closed. Okay, let me just go to let me just share the full screen. Okay, we'll sort out the tech at some point. So yeah, the two biggest contributors to CO2 emissions, if we think about which sort of sectors of the economy are most responsible, is energy production, so heating, electricity, and agriculture. Agriculture and land use for any kind of agriculture. Let me just get up the pie chart now, and we'll go to the types of industry. Can anyone think of the types of, and the third one as well, industry? So third is the industry is the highest, the third highest, sorry, at 21%. So what kind of industries do we think? Sweet potato, orange looks suspiciously like potato. Yeah. Oh, someone's getting hungry. Someone not had lunch. Everyone keeps wanting to talk about potatoes, which is making me a little bit hungry, if I'm honest. Also, I didn't mention, just while I'm trying to get my screen sorted, I didn't mention that I have tried to put on my earrings that are kind of vaguely climate change related. I thought maybe it was like lending a helping hand to the environment and caring about the world in our hands. That was my only metaphor I could think of. We have the world in our hands. Okay, let me just finally get what I actually meant to get up. And there it is. Okay, cool. Right, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. So, what industries? I love the thank you. What industries do we think have the highest CO2 emissions? So if we're looking at this this area here, so the industry's at 21%. Oh, okay. Jeff's is saying clothing and textiles. Now, this is one that actually, when we think about how much we're told about not wasting, not buying cheap clothes from Primark, not kind of buying really cheap disposable items, that's one thing that we get told is one of the biggest things. Well, it gets advertised to us as like, oh, you're really bad if you go and shop at cheap clothes shops. When actually there's a big socioeconomic debate there, right? About actually we need to have these affordable products for people to buy, and you can't expect. Also, the industry creates a huge amount of work for people in Southeast Asia and the place where these clothes are manufactured. Someone said cement. That's a really good guess. But actually, clothes. So I was going to say clothes is actually a really a small percentage of industry and manufacturing. It's much smaller than you think. The chemicals that are used in the clothes, however, we're going to come to that in a second. I'm going to wait for a few more answers to come in. Someone said food. Yeah, food processing absolutely does have an impact. Okay, I'm going to go down to the two biggest ones. So, this looks a little bit like oil, so I'm sorry that's my oil drum is a little bit deceiving. But steel and iron are the two biggest is one of our biggest things that we manufacture that produce a huge amount of CO2 emissions. So what do we use steel and iron for? We're going to think about like who, again, going back to our question, who is responsible for climate change, and how are we going to sort of essentially make adjustments to our, not just our lifestyles, but the way that we consume goods. Basically everything. Yeah, Jeffers, you're right. Infrastructure, buildings, yeah, construction. So we've got construction industries are massive part of this. Okay. So we think about how we're producing, how we are, how much in terms of in terms of demand for housing in urban areas, in terms of developing world in cities that are growing much more quickly than say cities in the UK. We still have a housing crisis in the UK, but obviously construction in general globally is consuming lots and lots of steel and iron. Absolutely. Oh, cool. Okay, Matt, excellent. This is really interesting. So I'll just read this out. A friend of mine called Ellen is suing the Dutch government for allowing Tata Steel to pollute the world so much. She's really cool. Oh, we should look that up. So this is this is a really good point, because if we're thinking about who's responsible and stakeholders, we're going to get to that kind of in the last 10 minutes of our live. Companies like Tata Steel. So Tata Steel is an Indian company, and they actually tried to buy a steelworks in Wales not so long ago. and to try and keep it going, because there was lots of jobs created in this industry in this town near the steel works. Essentially, something like 70% of the people in that town worked in industries linked to steel. So Tata Steel would be a kind of company you could assign to having this like really having high CO2 emissions, absolutely. And Catherine's requested, can we talk about someone trying to sue the government tomorrow, which I also agree. I have to maybe ask my housemate, who is a lawyer, I will show off about that, name drop, how you would sue a government as well, because that's fascinating. So the next type of industry that I want to mention is actually the chemical processing industry. So what if let's throw out some ideas just generally, and I might get Matt to jump in on this one as well. What kind of chemicals do we produce that are used in another sector of the economy that also produces a lot of CO2? So I'm going to give you a little clue. It's going to keep crop yields high, if anyone knows what crop yield is. Oh, Izzy's jumped straight in there, and I'm going to say the answer in a second. Izzy got it first. Fertilizers. Okay, so petrochemicals in general are used to produce all of the goods that we consume. But a massive part of the chemical industry is this production of fertilizers, pesticides, ammonia. Yes, to be able to Rebecca, excellent, to try and keep our soil productive. And as Matt was saying, because of soil degradation caused by livestock farming and by other human activities, including just sort of settlement building and deforestation. This means that to keep the soil productive, we need to dump a lot of fertilizers and pesticides onto them, and we're working the land too hard for how much it can produce. So there's a method that's been used in the UK over numbers of years and has been used all over the world, which is called rotational outcropping, which means you leave a field every 4 to 5 years. You leave it fallow, so meaning you don't grow anything in it. And actually, that's not even enough time. Like usually, they would leave it fallow for maybe 10 to 11 years. But we've got out of the habit of doing this because of the fact that we demand the demand for food and for crops has risen so much due to population growth. Okay, so let's go to the next part of our pie chart. So I'm going to just scroll up to the next one. So we're going to look at agriculture and forestry. First of all, so if we go back to thinking about what it is that has increased our demand for meat products. So can we think of a particular? I'm just going to full screen myself because I'm just going to get this ready. So which country? Oh, tell us about the land being fallow. Okay, interesting. Forestry actually mean deforestry. Yeah, so the forestry, good, there's this good point. So forestry does mean deforestation. The forestry industry means that that we are chopping down trees, whether it's for the actual wood products that they are used for, or it's to make to clear the land to be used for cattle farming. And in tropical areas, tropical regions of the world, this is happening much more quickly. So you think about countries like Brazil that have increased their meat consumption due to people's lifestyles, their wealth going up, and also demand for meat globally. So they want to export beef to other parts of the world to meet demand. Then this has led to a huge amount of deforestation. So yeah, agriculture, forestry, and that other land use as part of the pie chart is a good one. Okay, so and fallow essentially means fallow means when you leave a field to essentially like become wild. So naturally, like the land will sort of grow over. It might become like a wild meadow, and for a solid kind of 9 to 10 years, that the nitrates in the topsoil that make the soil fertile can then replenish from decomposition of the plants that are on it already, from animals contributing to this, animal droppings and all of these things that add nitrates back into the soil. Okay. Right, let's go to looking at this agriculture and forestry question. So let me actually get it ready this time. So if we're thinking about, again, who is responsible, who on the planet and what collection of people, who is responsible for climate change, where in the world do you think the most meat is consumed? Izzy's asking if you can grow like beans and pulses, like the use of legumes. I think that also means onions as well. Izzy is like, do you mean onions by legumes? And Jeffis, yeah, we'll get back to that in a sec. Izzy, I'll answer your question about legumes in a second with the nitrates into the soil. I think I might have to do a little bit of research into that as well myself. So the West, absolutely. So we've got thank you. There's Molodin. I'm not going to get people's names right, and if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I'm not assuming your screen names are your actual names either. But yeah, the Western world, absolutely. The USA, interestingly, I know I'm gonna show you now. The UK doesn't actually come into the top. I've selected the top 10 countries in the world that consume meat per person. Okay, so we've got the United States at top, and interestingly, between 2002 and 2009, it shows that actually was reduced kind of by 4 kilograms, but that is a small amount if you think about the scale of it. Can anyone think of why meat consumption has grown in say countries like Kuwait? It's been grown by almost double in countries like Kuwait. It's now one of the top meat consuming countries in the world. Does everyone know where Kuwait is as well? Yeah, New Zealand is really high. Everyone, and actually, interestingly, when we look at all of the kind of individual actions that people are taking to be more responsible for climate change, New Zealand comes really high up in the sort of people living off the land and trying to alter their lifestyles. And I know that Matt's actually visited there and has family out there, so that he can talk about this a little bit as well. Yeah, Kuwait is near Saudi Arabia, absolutely. It's to the north of Saudi Arabia. It's like a very, very small country, produces a lot of oil, has a lot of oil reserves. Okay. So why would Kuwait, if we're saying why would Kuwait, why would Kuwait have doubled their meat consumption? Think of the reasons. It might be somehow linked a bit to the oil industry. Why are people in Kuwait eating so much more meat now? Because they can afford to buy it. Yeah, good. Population growth might be a part of it as well, Catherine. Yeah, absolutely. But it's a lot of this, the meat consumption that's happening, the increase in meat consumption is actually due to people becoming more affluent. It's due to developing world countries as well as sort of middle income countries then now aspiring to have a meat based diet, because they see it as being healthier. You get a lot of nutrients from meat, but also they can afford to buy it because meat is really expensive. If you've never been to the supermarket, and well, I'm sure that you've been to the supermarket, but if you do switch to being vegetarian, you will find your shopping budget does go down a lot. But it's whether people are willing to make that sacrifice. Okay, I wanted to talk quickly about. Let me go back to this. Talk quickly about this image here. And I've got a delicious Western McDonald's burger, just as a little reminder of why do people want to eat so much meat, is because of this kind of advertising kind of industry around like fast foods and again aspiring to have this Western diet that you see on billboards and big TNCs like McDonald's make this a really big point when they go to a country. Does anyone know any McDonald's products that are culturally kind of, they're almost altered to be branded towards another country? Does anyone know of any of these? Anyone been to another country with McDonald's that has a different menu? Yeah, they do. Absolutely. They have the muk paneer burger in India. Someone's saying lots of veggie stuff. They have tacos in Mexico. Interesting. But they probably so the in India, they are, despite the country becoming more affluent and being one of our sort of more recently industrialized countries and our kind of manufacturing hubs of the world, because of their religious beliefs due to, about cows being sacred, their meat consumption, as particularly of beef, is much lower than other countries like China. So if you look at India and China as these two recently industrialized countries, maybe we look at the meat consumption in both of those places. Actually, China is much higher than India for that reason. And rice in Japan, yeah, the muk paneer. Okay. So, does anyone know what it's called when we produce crops on a really large scale, and we produce one type of crop in a very in one sort of large field, a bit like the picture that I've shown you on the screen? What is it called when you produce one type of crop in a big place? Oh, someone's already got it. So loads of people have got it. A monoculture. So what is the problem with monocultures? Why is this maybe, if we're thinking about the responsibility for climate change and the CO2 emissions produced, why having monocultures and producing crops on this scale such a big problem? Think about maybe how are we going to create a field big enough? Okay, good, nice. Okay, yeah, people are saying maybe something to do with the soil, something to do with yeah, absolutely. So if you think about Rebecca's got it spot on. So if you think about the trees that are cut down to create these large fields, so a lot of this will lead to deforestation. Those trees stored carbon over their whole life cycle, and as soon as you take down the trees, that carbon is then released into the atmosphere. Okay, because trees not only absorb carbon, but they also contain carbon themselves, and it takes away the ability for the soil, like we said. Someone said because it's more takes the ability of the soil to actually sequester, which means like absorb carbon. So by creating these monocultures, you are removing and cutting down trees, absolutely, and the soil, good, Fatima, absolutely. The soil doesn't get all the different nutrients it needs. So by removing the diversity, and as Rebecca mentioned, the biodiversity of these areas, you're taking away the ability of other parts of the carbon cycle to absorb carbon. So can anyone think of any big companies that encourage this type of monoculture farming? Some people might have some knowledge of this. Oh, and Matt said minimal fungal networks as well. Yeah, that fungi is so important for breaking stuff down. I think I might have missed the thing about networks, that if you did a live on that recently, but cool. I should make sure I look that up. Can anyone think of this of a big agro company? So I'm gonna get fast forward because we're slightly running out of time. So okay, palm oil, absolutely. If you palm oil is used in lots of our shampoo products, anything, cosmetics products, to produce peanut butter. It goes into making it's essentially a kind of oil that makes the process of manufacturing things much quicker, and you have to use less of it when you're producing something. Matt's promoting his fungal. Stop promoting your lives on my live, Matt. But yeah, I was thinking, we're thinking about the kind of responsibility and the stakeholders involved in producing, sort of encouraging this type of farming. Monsanto, if you want to look them up, I should maybe write that down so you guys can see how it's spelled. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. By the next live, I'm gonna be so so au fait with my new board and being able to annotate things. So Monsanto, if you want to look up this agro company, and Matt's mentioned Unilever as well. Yeah, Matt, this Unilever own a lot of different food companies and have not committed, as Matt said, to not using sustainable palm oil as well as using less palm oil. Actually, this is a good point though. If palm oil is produced in a sustainable way, then this can actually lead to less types of oil being used, like crop-based oils. So you think about oilseed rape. That is also a crop that produces a natural oil, plant-based oil, and how quickly palm oil does grow means that actually on a sort of in the long term, if we do it sustainably and reduce our dependence on it slightly, then it might lead to less issues with land use. Okay, we're going to go down to, so we've thought a little bit about electricity and heat production. I'm going to show you some statistics that I find really interesting on the next slide. Let me just come back to doing some full screen. So if we're thinking about countries that use the most crude oil, doesn't sell. Oh, Mariella saying that Iceland doesn't sell items with palm oil like at all. But it's in the whole country of Iceland doesn't use palm oil, Mariella. And Miz said Iceland, country of Iceland, the supermarket. Yeah, good point. What? Yeah, Mariella, is it the brand supermarket products? Oh, the Iceland, the supermarket. I don't know why I thought that you meant the whole country. We're definitely meaning the supermarket. And also, Iceland has committed to being the first supermarket to have zero packaging waste, zero plastic waste. I think so. They're going to be the first ones to not use any plastic in their the way that they sell their food, which I think maybe is because they sell frozen goods. That makes it easier. But yeah, you should shop at Iceland because that makes it more sustainable, makes our food consumption more sustainable. Okay, so the last one I wanted to show you, which I think you're going to find interesting, is some statistics about CO2 emissions, and I've got a little quote as well for you that I think is quite apt. I will often get a quote from this man into many of my lives just because I think that he is an important man to try and bring down because he just says a lot of terrible things. You're more impressed that it's a supermarket, yeah. Matt saying, do you see the couple that proposed in Iceland the supermarket because their trip to Iceland was cancelled due to the lockdown? No, that's such a good story. I have to look that up. That's amazing. So they went to Iceland instead of actual Iceland. Oh, it's lovely. Okay, something not so lovely is this Donald Trump quote that I want to show you. So the problem with the concept of global warming is that the US is spending a fortune on fixing it, while China and others do nothing. Now, is that true? Do you think that China and others, I don't know what others he's talking about, other countries, what's the USA even doing to fix it themselves is the question. Or do you think it's true that China is the biggest producer of CO2 emissions, they manufacture a lot of goods, that they're the ones they're the country that are responsible? Do you agree with Trump? I won't take that away from you. No, you don't think that's true. Okay. What's his issue with China? Catherine, his issue with China is that he has started trade war with China because he thinks that the USA should protect their manufacturing jobs. So there's lots of people who want to work in manufacturing, wants to make sure that the economy is strong by manufacturing goods instead of importing them. But they've been in a trade war since Trump came into power, and he just thinks that China is the root cause of all evil, which is terrible. Yeah. Okay. So Jeff has said, how is China actually trying to? So with Donald Trump is not correct, but how is China trying to to help. I'm going to give you a clue because it links to our final part of our CO2 emissions. Oh, that's not a clue. Buying products is due to other countries buying. Yeah, so Rebecca's made a really good point that actually just because China itself is meeting demand for the products that we consume. So we, as a consumer economy, and as an economy where we do consider buying kind of luxuries and things that we don't necessarily need, as part of our right as living in a capitalist society, China is just meeting that demand, and they're meeting the demand for clothes, for food products, for everything. So the good point about the Paris Agreement. The USA has said that they pull out of the Paris climate change. Good knowledge, by the way, Mears. China, I think, actually, in terms of like legally, I don't think they actually can pull out of the Paris climate change, the Paris summit. If they did, then it would make the whole like agreement void. But I'd have to look that up. That's something we can come back to in another one, because we can do that. Okay, so let's kind of wrap up by having a little look at my favourite thing, which is the sliding scale, because we've talked a lot about different issues, and actually I forgot to show you my statistics at the top. This one here, these statistics here, show the countries that have historically produced the most CO2 emissions. So the UK is actually second from the top in terms of the amount of CO2 produced historically, and Canada is up there. The USA is absolutely up there. All Western countries, Western and European countries, and including Russia as well. But if we look at per person CO2 emissions per year, the USA is actually much higher than countries like China, and China is actually one of the countries that's investing. Izzy, well done. That's per person. So China is investing. China and India are actually two of the countries in the world investing the most in renewable energy technologies. So if you look at how much money they spend by government spending, as well as like individual sort of companies manufacturing solar panels and wind turbines, and other types of renewable energy like hydropower, they're investing the most money in this, and want to make renewable energy part of their targets in reducing CO2 emissions. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Who do we think, if we think about our options, let's get some options up for the final bit, okay? So if we think about individual stakeholders, so people that we use this in geography, you might have heard of this term before if you've done GCSE geography, you might have done it even a little bit younger. So who are stakeholders in being responsible for climate change? Oh, Jeff has said Russia is Satan. I don't know if, well, Russia has different political views to us, and also is trying to kind of vie for power on a world stage. And Putin is quite a scary leader, but I don't know if it maybe links to the devil. Russia is something to do with the numbers. Is it the way that you spell it? Anyway, Jeff, so I'm gonna ignore that just for now. So who are the individual stakeholders who are responsible for, if we think about how we're going to slow down the onset of climate change, and how we're going to essentially try to kind of save the temperature in the climate at the moment? Who is going to Matt, you're right, Russia's dial code is 007. Who are the stakeholders responsible for this? So I'll give you a clue. We've got the agriculture industry. Let's think about TNCs, so global companies, like Monsanto, like Unilever, agriculture and food industries, let's say. They're a stakeholder. Who else? Who are the other stakeholders we can mention? Is anyone still here? We've gone over a little bit over time, but I just wanted to wrap up with a bit of analysis, thinking about who's responsible. Oh, someone said banking. Excellent. Okay, yeah, for let's say forestry industry. Good, Catherine. And we've obviously got the if we say the meat industry as well, if we're thinking about who it is that's causing deforestation. Okay, here we go. Energy companies. So let's think. Can anyone think of any examples of energy companies? The names of any oil companies. BP, yeah, good. BP, we've got Shell, and we've actually got some Chinese companies as well, which I'm forgetting the name of, that have become much bigger. Exxon, yeah, good. But these are all, you might have heard of some of these oil companies because of oil spills. ExxonMobil had a very big oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico that still hasn't been cleaned up. But we can, again, I will be here for hours if we get into that. Equinor I've never heard of. Lodian, that's interesting. I have to look them up. So we've finally got government, okay? And we're missing a really key stakeholder that actually relates to you guys. Okay, I'm going to tell you. The individuals there we go, Izzy, you got there. Excellent, thank you, Izzy. So individuals as consumers. So thinking about how actually as consumers we are responsible in lots of ways for the demand that we put onto these industries. Like if we're eating lots of meat, then obviously that means that more meat has to be produced. Okay, I'm going to number these, and then we're going to try and put them onto the sliding scale to finish us off. Okay, so who do you think is the most responsible in terms of, like, if we're going to really put pressure on, and as Matt was saying, like spending our time now protesting and trying to target the people that are actually going to make a difference. Car industry is industry one, Jeffis. We're going to leave it at these 7. So who do we think is the most responsible? Where would we put this on our sliding scale? Who are we going to target? Who are we going to try and boycott? Who are we going to write letters to? Jeff has said, okay, energy companies and governments coming right up there. Okay, I'm going to put them up here. So we've got, one sec. Okay, so we've got energy companies, absolutely. I think that the combination, as Matt was discussing earlier, the combination of governments creating incentives for energy companies to invest in renewable technology, this is a really big part of it. Now, if they're the ones who are going to could make the most immediate change to the amount of CO2 emissions produced. And now Catherine said individuals, and I actually do. I actually think I agree in terms of individuals being more powerful than they kind of realise. Because if you think about, if individuals were going to actually demand change and were not going to whether it was not supporting governments that supported the use of fossil fuels, or investment from the banking sector, kind of investing people's pension funds, so that's where you like put your savings, as well as when you're older, that we said, okay, actually investments need to all be responsible and sustainable, and we made a law that meant that all investment funds in banking had to put their money in their investment into renewable energy and into kind of waste saving activities. Then this could make a massive difference on CO2 emissions. But I'm going to put individuals up there as well, because I think we are more powerful than more powerful than we realise. So I'm going to leave it there, because I think that's a nice message to go on, is to feel more empowered and to feel more like you can kind of demand change. And as Matt said, let us know what you think about this live, and getting some feedback on the theme of it and the discussion. Obviously, have to apologise for my tech use, because Matt was asking whether you'd like a PowerPoint or the paint thing, and I was planning on doing a bit more annotations, but seeing it's my first one, I'm just getting used to it. But thanks for tuning in, and thanks for being here, and for contributing your ideas. And yeah, hope to see you guys again soon. Okay, have a lovely rest of the day. Go get outside, enjoy some of this lovely sunshine. Okay, take care, everyone.